Hello and welcome everyone to Dyad in the Force. I am super excited to talk this week because we have so many awesome projects and things coming down the pipeline. We're going to be talking about some High Republic information, an interview with Claudia Gray. We'll be talking about Vader 2020, the latest issue that came out. We'll be talking Book of Boba Fett, and we'll be taking questions from you. That's all happening tonight here on Dyad in the Force.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Dyad in the Force. I'm your host, Element 7.
And I'm Darth Jocko, and we have an amazing guest again with Victoria Vader.
It's Victoria, y'all. Every time I just have to do that.
It's Victoria, y'all. Yeah. Thank y'all so much for having me. I'm so excited to be back today. Lots of cool topics to chat about.
Yeah, lots of things coming down the pipeline. It's just all coming into view now. The closer we get to the first book of the High Republic, that release, and then the next month and the next month, there's just something happening for the next year. I think every month that is going to just, man, like I can't put into words how great it feels to be a Star Wars fan. But first and foremost, how is everybody's holidays?
Nothing too special here, but I am excited because I've arranged to watch Wonder Woman tomorrow with an amazing group of people, and that's going to be a lot of fun. And also watched Soul this morning. Great movie.
Oh, I forgot that came out.
Great movie. My wife is bawling, and yeah, it's touching. So, yeah, just having fun, spending time with family.
That's good.
Yeah, it was a great, busy holiday. I'm getting married next Saturday. So on top of everything, I'm moving, fun holidays, and I'm getting married on Saturday. I'm very, very excited. One of my favorite gifts this year was actually a pizza cutter that has the Darth Vader's lightsaber hilt as the pizza cutter. And it has a light that comes out around the blade. So
like an LED really cutter.
Oh yeah, it has, and it's of course red. But yeah, so that was probably my favorite thing. And then I have a Darth Vader Instant Pot. So I'm gonna make Darth Vader beef stew.
Wait.
Is it?
I have two questions.
That's the official recipe. I'm not lying.
Is it made of chunks of real Vader? Like,
oh gosh, I don't know if we're ready for that part.
Because I do have an Instapot. I do have an Instapot. But is it like his helmet?
So it's like, okay, it's an experience. All right. So you open the box and it says, "Welcome to the Empire." And then it has like this great insert that talks about how to use the Instant Pot and like wield the dark side and blah, blah, blah. It's like really cool stuff. But then on the side, it like when you pull the Instant Pot out on the side, it's kind of like almost like a blueprint type style of his helmet.
Yeah.
And you see like his profile and you see the Death Star plans. It's really pretty neat. And I think everybody kind of knows that I hate to cook. And so they're trying to like bribe me into it by getting me all of this like Vader kitchen stuff. And so now I've got this apron that's like Darth Vader. And I'm like, all right, well, I got to start cooking now.
Yeah, I love to cook, but the Instant Pot definitely makes it a lot easier. I mean, I used to make a killer mushroom risotto just from scratch, but having that Instant Pot definitely within 6 minutes is incredible. Like
on the side of the box, though, it says Darth Vader beef stew, and it has a good recipe. I was not lying about it.
I can't. A, I need to see pictures of the Instant Pot, and B, yeah, that sounds amazing.
Yeah,
and
I'm excited.
I also need confirmation if one of the cook settings is Mustafar.
Oh, it's gotta be. It's gotta be. If it's not, I'm gonna change it.
Did you get a chance to add more Star Wars stuff to your registry? Because I'm a little bummed.
all of them were gone. Like, I'm telling you, I looked back on it and everything was gone and like not available anymore, because like the first time I was supposed to get married was this time last year.
Yeah.
So I had already started making registries, and so now it's like all unavailable. But I have an ornament, and I think it's him and Nita.
Oh,
That's the only thing I'm.
I mean, do you have like a general wish list I could just look at and then just say congratulations?
I haven't made one, but I was thinking about making one tonight.
Do it.
Just because, like, I didn't want to put like books and things on my registry, because my partner is like, Victoria, you got like 17 Darth Vader books on your registry. No, there was one that Emily gave me, and it says "Be More Vader," and it says "Assertive Thinking from the Dark Side," and it's basically like an advice book or like a self-help book, but it's all like advice from Darth Vader.
Wow, the 10-step guide to be Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Oh, one a present that I got is a video of Element 7 just shredding on guitar.
Oh yeah.
Did you see my comment? I was like, of course, you're
I did,
musical.
yeah.
Of course. Of course.
I was feeling generous. I mean, I don't usually. I mean, it's been months since I've like. If you were here right now, you'd see my Slash Les Paul, and the one I was playing with on the wall, and it just sits there all year. My calluses were gone. It hurt so bad, but I was lucky enough to get that solo out.
Yep.
So let's move on to our first topic. We got confirmation, right? We got the Mandalorian finale, and it hinted at this book of Boba Fett, and people were like, "Hey, is this season 3? Is this the end of the Mandalorian?" But Favreau confirmed it is its own show. And it's going to be in the same timeline as The Mandalorian. Your guys' thoughts on like what they could possibly do with Boba Fett. I mean, of course it's its own show, right? He's not a Mandalorian. Let's get that straight out of the gate.
I think the sky's the limit with this one. I definitely think it'll have some sort of it'll have a different personality for sure. Like with the Mandalorian, like, yes, it's quintessential Star Wars in so many ways, but it's a different personality. And we see like a different feeling. And so I definitely think even with the scene we got at the end credit scene, you felt like the reverberation and like the anticipation. You were just like ready for something to happen. And so I think we'll see some like really interesting, different things. And I guess what I'm trying to say is I have no idea, and I think the sky is the limit with this one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the same with you, because honestly, we know almost nothing about Boba Fett.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and like, so watching, you know, them come in, take down Bib Fortuna. Sorry, anytime I say his name, my mind goes really longer. Like, Jabba no Bada.
Boba. That's the new one for me.
But like, why did he take over? Does he want to be a crime boss? Because we haven't gotten that from anything at all. Like, that he wanted to rule anything. Like, he's always just been a bounty hunter. So maybe he's turning over a new leaf. Maybe he's no longer going to be a bounty hunter. I don't know. Maybe that was just one stop and Bib Fortuna was a bounty. There's a lot of possibilities because we really don't know anything about the character. We know that he looked really cool in Empire Strikes Back, and
he got jobbed.
We run.
He got hit in the back on his jetpack, and that was when everyone was like, and he fell into the Sarlacc pit, and that's when everyone was like, he's the coolest character ever. But we do have now if you read some of the Bounty Hunter comic, like, there is some stuff with Boba Fett, but you're right. It's largely just him trying to make Krait's Claw like this best in class bounty hunter gang, and there's no ambition or aspiration that has anything to do with the underworld. But I think it's an interesting angle to pursue with Boba Fett. I mean, of course, like seeing that him on the throne with Fennec right next to him, I don't know, like I just the interesting part or the interesting angle about pursuing this is in that way is that we have never really gone that far deep into it. Like we scraped the surface with Solo, you know, with what's her name, Lady Proxima and Crimson Dawn, Dryden Voss, and just like that, the criminal elements ancillary to Solo's story. But imagining a show that's centered around the underworld, and I've said this a couple of times in other episodes, that we may even see like Nar Shaddaa and just a planet full of criminals, and we'll get like a Scarface or some type of gangland type of show.
I want to see Gracchus the Hutt.
Do you think is Zero still around?
Oh God, I hope not. No. Zero bit the bullet.
So in addition to it being its own show, Favreau also said that they were going to be filming that right before season 3 of The Mandalorian. And I think this is an interesting thing because we're going to be talking about Ahsoka and Rangers of the New Republic as well. Actually, we might as well move on to those as well, because Ahsoka and Rangers of the New Republic on Good Morning America, Favreau confirmed that both of these shows are right after Return of the Jedi, and I don't know if he means right after, like literally, or within the same timeline as Mandalorian. But thinking about this gestalt that he's created right after Return of the Jedi, Book of Boba Fett, Mandalorian Season 3, Ahsoka, Rangers of the New Republic. This is... We've been clamoring for this gap, this 30-year gap to be filled ever since The Force Awakens came out. We saw the title crawl, like, wait, what happened in the last 30 years? So, this is it, you know, and it's all thanks to that finale with, spoiler alert, Luke Skywalker, that we're just like, everything is on the table. If we're going to explore this timeline, we can see Leia, we can see Luke, we can see all of these big characters from the saga films just create this web of narrative on Disney Plus.
No, it's just like you said, we are building this Favreau-verse type deal where we're going to be able to see a lot of crossovers because they are, you know, doing all of these things together. Saying that they take place right after, that's the question. That's a big question I have as well, because this could potentially mean that, at least for the Ahsoka show, I want to see both. I want to see it start from what you saw at the end of Rebels, because we know her and Sabine have been doing stuff for the past 5 years. Yeah. We don't know what that is. Also, I honestly think that Ahsoka is, has forgiven. Her relationship with the Jedi is, at least internally, has changed a lot, and we may be able to see that journey rather than just the effects of it. But we know that she's still looking for Thrawn. We need that to get resolved. So I don't know. Well, maybe season 1 is the first 5 years. Season 2 jumps ahead. A lot of possibilities. But also, Rangers of the New Republic can't take place right after.
That's true.
No New Republic yet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that has to become a thing first, right? The
title could be like a foreshadow.
Like what will become.
Yeah, they're not the New Republic yet, but like there's like Rangers like Kara and maybe Jason Syndulla, who is working their way to become Rangers.
True. But again, if it's just after, Jason will still be too young.
That's true as well.
So I had and you can just shoot this down if it's wrong, but what if the Boba Fett show has something to do, how in Bloodline, Ren Riven Dai had all of that, like, do you think that there could be some sort of link or no? Like Boba could be a cornerstone in making all of this happen?
Vic, you're like the narrative catalyst for my brain right now.
Because,
yeah.
He couldn't have done it by himself, right?
But they already talk about how that power vacuum gave the opportunity, and he's the first person stepping into this vacuum. But interesting.
No, I absolutely agree. It's a definite possibility. We can see the whole lead up to Bloodline, just like the whole setup of the Maxine's and Renner and Die. We're definitely, if it lasts long enough, like these shows, we could definitely see the beginnings of the New Republic, because it's already 9 ABY. So, I know Bloodline is 20 years or 15
25 years after Return of the Jedi.
Right. Okay. So, when we meet Leia in Bloodline, everything is already kind of in motion. So Boba Fett for sure could, be very in the smack dab in the center of the beginnings of this whole plot to start the First Order, but from the underworld angle. And we get to see, as you said, Ren Riven Dai and all of those people. Man, this is going to be a great show.
I'm excited.
We talk about like the books and all of these stories that have nothing to do with Jedi and Sith. And I think this is what they're creating. Obviously we have Acolyte, but and Ahsoka, but there's a lot of shows right now that could just give us all of these great Lost Stars type of narratives and Bloodline narratives. It's crazy. But then there's also a rumor right now that Disney Plus or Disney and Lucasfilm are in early development for a Luke show.
I was reading those ones as well. And I think that's what we need. I do think that's what we need. We need to explore Luke in his prime, and we need to set up what will eventually become his fall.
Yeah. We'll talk more about that. This one thread that Chaco found, who did an amazing and brilliant write-up on how the Luke from the finale connects to the Last Jedi Luke. But yeah, we definitely need that portion, just like we've been talking about with these new shows, Book of Boba Fett, Ahsoka, Rangers. A new Luke show, just this 30-year gap is full of possibilities. I read that rumor and I was like, are we just going to get like an NJO in canon? And of course we know where it ends up, but that's neither here nor there. It doesn't really determine how we feel about a story, because we knew where Vader ended up before watching the prequels. So we get the sequels, we know where that ends up.
At least most of us knew.
Yeah, and so all these stories are gonna be just as amazing and just as epic. And I don't know, at least for me personally, knowing where Luke ends up would make his story within this gap his prime years, teaching his students and hopefully sending Grogu off on his trials before all that happens is going to be an amazing story. What are you guys most excited to see if they do end up announcing a Luke show? And don't take the easy way out with prime Luke. Give us some meat meat and potatoes.
I mean, being able to watch him, my mind obviously goes straight back to the Rise of Kylo Ren comic, and to specifically the part where him and Lor San Tekka were traveling around, finding some really cool artifacts and all these things. To see, where did he locate, these ancient texts? Also, how did the whole connection with Grogu work? Like he called. How did Luke know exactly where to find him? He picked up his Force signature or something like that and just followed it. It's probably not the first time he did that, and it's certainly not going to be the last time. So we can also see him go on these missions and things and saving these kids. I did think it's a little strange. He shows up and they're on an Imperial ship like that. He has no care of what's happening.
Yeah.
Doesn't ask them like, hey, what does it like? Just murks a whole bunch of Dark Troopers. Doesn't say, hey guys, what's going on? Like, can I help in any way? Or like no, give me that baby. All right, deuces.
That's so funny too. There was no urgency. There was no pep in his step either, right? Because he kind of came in and just parked the X-wing. Right? He didn't come in like rushed, and then he moseyed down the hallway. I think he knew he was being recorded, or he was on the camera.
Oh yeah, that'd be very Skywalker to be that little touch of
theatrical. No, the Skywalkers, they're theatrical. Yeah, moseying is exactly what I would call that entrance.
The Skywalker mosey.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I would be excited to see Luke piecing together what it means to be a Jedi, and seeing the failures, but not really seeing the failures. We see him have these texts and like, the ancient Jedi texts, and Yoda's like, read them, have you? And it's interesting, like seeing how he would build his idea of the Jedi. I'm interested in that, and like you were saying about gathering the artifacts, gathering like all these quests to find these kids. I don't know, like falling into his role as an instructor, because doing and being an instructor are totally different actions, and so I would be interested to see Luke shift into those roles. Like in the Star Wars 2020, we see him kind of like grapple with his own identity in relationship to darkness.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to see, it would perhaps be interesting to see how he relates to that. Like in Bloodline, Leia recounts like Luke talking of Anakin with like certainty. Like he knew what the light looked like as soon as he saw it at the end of Return of the Jedi. And so just that idea of hopefulness is so ingrained into Luke. And so when we see who he is in The Last Jedi with wisdom, and we'll speak on this later, but I would be interested to see those blind spots get created.
Absolutely. Definite blind spots, because if you read Secrets of the Jedi, which is his, sequel journal, you know that he's received counsel from Yoda, Obi-Wan, even Qui-Gon at some point, and you bring up a good point about him kind of going around with Lor San Tekka, finding these artifacts and finding all of this ancient knowledge. And for me personally, I agree it would be a great thing to witness how he comes up with his Jedi Order, recognizes their hubris and their failures, but still fall into a trap of emulating them to the point where he had failed them just like them in the past. I'm also interested additionally to see what kind of new abilities he unlocks, because we only got Force projection. And so at his prime, when he's a little bit more pep in his step, And he's trying to be this grand master for his students. I'm wondering if he's going to show them a few things, some in a black hole. I don't think Disney is down for creating that power creep, but just imagining all of his travails in rebuilding the Jedi Order, I think, is going to be great for a lot of fans, especially fans who wanted to see this, who wanted the sequels to be NJO, who didn't want to make that jump. And I don't know, like, so final question on this, like, do you think the sequels would have been better or worse if it had been right after episode 6?
I think for me personally, when I saw The Force Awakens, it took me a little while to settle in to where I was in time and how I got there. And I think that was a common experience amongst a lot of fans. And while I've found like peace in that 30-year gap and we're getting so much new material, I think a lot of fans never found that piece of that gap. And so it felt like everything came out of nowhere when it didn't. It was very foreshadowed, like, I mean, there's so much material telling you everything that's going to happen in so many ways. And now we're getting the meat of it in a very clear picture. I don't think I would have liked the sequels had they come right after, like, I'm talking like Return of the Jedi next day. I don't think I would have liked that. And I don't think that it would have been as expansive and given us as much to work with. Because now, like, you know, the whole first step into a larger world, we get that over and over again. Like, just when you think you know Star Wars, it's bigger. And I think that's something beautiful that's, you know, woven into the fabric of Star Wars. Like, you can't just have one thing. Like, no, it's like the layers analogy, like the onion analogy you always use. You can't just find one piece, and then just when you think you know all the pieces, there's more. And so I think while there may have been more cohesion or like a more easy peacefulness in understanding where you were in time, I don't think in the long run it would give us what we were hungry for in Star Wars. And that is a huge, expansive, you know, relatable universe. And that's the beauty of it, is like all of us are so different. And so we need an expansive universe to encapture all of us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree, and I love how you put that. For me, it just seems obvious that the next it wouldn't be a sequel trilogy. Like when we say sequel and prequel, we've always been talking about eras. You know what I mean? The prequel trilogy was not 3 movies about Luke as a child growing up, and even though I'm sure he had a bunch of adventures, it would be really interesting to see some of Han's adventures before then, and definitely with Leia, but that's not what it was. It's not a prequel to these characters. It's the previous generation, right? So yeah, I mean, it just makes sense that a sequel trilogy is going to be the following generation and not sequels to these specific characters.
Yeah, and I've said this a couple of times in defense of at least the challenge that they had set forth in front of them, is that Star Wars does its best when it knows where it's going and is filling in the gaps. A lot of people may not agree with that assessment, but they had the originals. And the prequel's job was to get to the originals, right? Story-wise, they had to get from Anakin, 9 years old, to Darth Vader. So the sequels had an increasingly challenging task of creating new ground, because they didn't have an episode 10 to reach. They didn't have a story beat to hit at the end of their sequels. They had to close out the whole thing. And so now what I think is happening with everyone enjoying The Mandalorian and being hyped about all these stories is that the sequel trilogies is their end game. And all of these stories that they're telling leading up to it is just it's them filling in the gaps like the prequels did for the originals. So all of these stories like Rogue Squadron, it may even be after Rise of Skywalker, or maybe within the sequel trilogy timeline. We don't know what future means, but it, like I said, like Star Wars does its best when it knows where it's going, and it just and you're like, this is where people were, and so now this is the story in between, and just like now with Obi-Wan, that 19-year gap on Tatooine is just a great vehicle for storytelling that we know B and we know A, but we don't know the in-betweens. And there's even rumors of Darth Maul and Kira show. So I think definitely I agree with everything that you guys said, but additionally, like, the gaps just enable more story.
That's exactly what the Clone Wars was. Is there was a gap between two films, and that's what Rebels is. That's what. Yeah, and we just need more of it, and I love that we are also getting another time period where we could potentially get more stories to fill in that gap. Now that we're getting the High Republic, and to see exactly what's going on there and how that is going to shape the future failings of the Jedi.
Yeah, but that's the same scenario though, right? Phantom Menace is their end game, or their spot that they have to lead up to, or at least kind of. I'm not sure when the High Republic ends, right? But it's 232 BBY to 41 BBY. So between for less than 200, more than 200 years. I don't know when the High Republic ends, but again, they have their end point in the story, and they just got to lead up to it. And this is why I'm so excited for the Acolyte, because it's at the tail end of the High Republic.
Tail end of it.
And we have the Drengir, we have the Nile, but we don't have any Sith, so to speak. But the Acolyte presents sort of that.
It kind of promises that, but we'll see. We'll see in what form.
They were like, "There's no Sith in the High Republic," and then they said, "But there's the Acolyte at the end," because of course, at the height of the Jedi Order and the height of the Republic, there might not be any Sith who had the gall to challenge that. But when things are going downhill. We'll talk a lot more about all of the new High Republic stuff we got from these interviews with all of the authors. Again, the High Republic is squarely in view now. With days, we're days away from the first book, which I'm probably going to read day one, the entire thing. Videos inbound.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
But we do have to discuss, especially with Victoria Vader here. Darth Vader 2020 issue number 8 is a doozy in terms of lore, right? So we in terms of the sequel trilogy, there was this Wayfinder that pointed to Exegol that Palpatine knew about and had in his own chambers, presumably came from the same person, which was this Eye of Webbish Bog. And then if you don't know, now you know, there's a deleted scene where in The Rise of Skywalker where Kylo Ren was supposed to get the Wayfinder from this Eye of Webbish Bog. And so now the question remains is, what is this thing? What is the Eye of Webbish Bog?
Nightmare fuel?
Yeah, nightmare fuel. No, I love it. In the concept art, it was referred to as the Oracle, and so I thought that was really, really neat. There was obviously like a big Bendu comparison with all of that. mind blown.
Yeah.
Who knew? And then just the idea that this is an embodiment of the dark side, and there's the symbiotic relationship between the spider-like figure and the giant. In many ways, that's symbolic of the dark side, because like Momin said, the dark side feeds on you. And so there's this idea of one cannot live without the other. And the idea of this one creature being two things was really interesting to me. And just the idea of like the dark side it serves. It doesn't serve you. You serve it. And the idea, just like the geography of Mustafar is haze. And so just like that juxtaposition of like haze and clarity. Like there's like the lava lakes fumes, like from Star Wars Adventures that, Lilith refers to as shadows of the mind that show you your fears and doubts and manifest as ghosts of the past. And so that's interesting. Just like in the geography of Mustafar, there's something that's clouding your vision. And so that says so much about the dark side to me. I thought that was like really fascinating. And like Momin said, like the very beasts themselves conspire to thwart my vision. I have lots of notes on this. I'm sorry. I love it. So Momin says that. And so like the lava fleas are thwarting his vision. And he says fascinating. And so just the idea that like there is no clarity in the dark side, even though this oracle is sort of promising this clarity. Right. The eye of the web. Can you see through those eyes? And then the idea of Mustafar itself being such an interesting like idea that's linked to Darth Vader's character in and of itself. Because the idea of machinery and hellishness is part of Mustafar, and just the idea of like, I don't know, there's just something like George Lucas came up with the idea like as a biblical hell, and like the name is like a Romanized version of the Chosen. And so it's just interesting, like that whole, the Mustafar is Darth Vader, and like Krennic thinks that it's Darth Vader's homeworld, and just like kind of muses around Rogue One that it is him. And so it's just interesting, like for instance, romantic poetry, they always said that like the person influences the way that the environment looks. So like you see, fog in London, and do you see romance and mystery? You see like darkness and misery. And I mean, just the idea of like Darth Vader being who he is and that being reflected in the environment is a quite emotion. And I think that's very poetic. The idea of his fortress being a tuning fork, just like focusing energies. And you can speak on this way better than I can because I'm not as literate in the lore. I just like the symbolism. And
I'm not sure I could.
I think you could. Like the locust there, is that legends or would that be canon? Like the Force locust?
Yeah, I mean, so Mustafar is it is a virgins. It is a Force virgins, and so I mean, I do believe that is why Webbish Bog is there, and like you said, it does feel to me to be some sort of dark side version of what like the Bendu is. It's just fascinating, and I love how wild they went with this and with the design. And this was shot for Rise of Skywalker as well, because Kylo Ren visited it as well, and then they cut it out. And I wish that they had gone that wild in live action. I mean, they shot it,
We need so much more of that, It seems like at first glance that stuff only works in comics, but you have to take those leaps of lore. You can't like. This is why, and I'm sorry if there's anybody in the audience that is listening to this or watching this that Rise of Skywalker is your favorite. It is my least favorite of the sequels because it was safe. It didn't. It cut out so much that it could have included that had so much potential, and it was a disappointing scene to watch when he killed a few Mustafarians, and then he opened a chest and there was the Wayfinder. There was nothing. It was just sitting there, and it would have exponentially lifted the narrative if he had to meet this dark side vergence in the eye. And
yeah, that was. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, and it freaks me out to think, is the eye one entity or is it two? And the one entity is the eye, and he's just kind of slurping on the head juices of the Edge of the Giant. Just, I don't know.
Yeah. So, when I was researching for background on this, I saw some dialogue from the eye to Kylo, and fiery planet burns away deception, and just like on that point of haze and clarity, and the idea of the dark side as an unreliable narrator. Like, we know the dark side is an unreliable narrator. We've seen it before. We've seen it, perhaps like in comics in the 2017 run of Darth Vader. And so it's interesting, just the idea of the eye and just deception. And so I don't know really more than that. It's a liar.
It keeps asking questions as well throughout this entire time, and Vader's asking but not getting any answers at all. At no point does he get an answer from Webbersbog. I don't believe. It's all just more questions. What do you want? What do you need? What do you choose? And even
or was it
end,
chosen for you?
Yeah.
Like the implications behind these questions is startling to think about. If Vader could, or if Anakin could just poke through and realize what this eye is asking him, he could put two and two together and realize that Palpatine this whole time had made these decisions for him. He just kind of lulled himself into the space where he just accepted them. It's also funny to think that the old adage in the Force, right, clouded by the dark side, but this whole concept of dark side users who are bathed in it are also equally as clouded by it. It doesn't get any clearer once you accept the dark side. It's interesting to think about.
Yeah, I do a lot of thinking on the idea of choice and the Darth Vader Anakin character. And so this comic was literally just like fuel to the flames.
Absolutely.
Mustafar pun intended. But the idea of the chosen one and free will, just the fact that Darth Vader feels like he has no choices sometimes, like we've spoken on this before, it is the only way. He says this a lot. And, the only a Sith deals in absolutes is, like a funny one, but it's interesting to think about. Like, you don't see choice. Like, Luke saw other ways, and that's how we juxtaposed him to Darth Vader. Like, when they're on Bespin and he says, "Join me, it is the only way." And Luke sees another way. Darth Vader didn't see it. And so the idea of choice and the chosen one character, and just like these panels, the "Who are you?" that Darth Vader asks, and the eye asks him back, "Who are you? Have you decided?" And just that, like the idea of giving him choice, and then the idea of not having choice. And I think that it's an interesting idea, like, because you mentioned sometimes, like, if all is as the Force wills it, did the Force will any of what did the Force will? And then it brings up that, like, that I called you, that I chose you. The eye asks him, like, you think that I chose you? You think that I called you to this purpose? And it's interesting to think about. I don't have any answers, just like the eye.
Right?
I'm just asking more questions.
Yeah.
But it's like very deep.
It's a never-ending riddle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it feels like to be clouded by the dark side.
I liked the last not the last panels I'm referring to it, I'm sorry. It was like the three. I have a physical copy, I don't know if you're, but the 3 panel.
Oh yes. Yes.
Anakin,
I loved it.
Yeah.
Yes. And just the idea of like he was still clouded even in Return of the Jedi. After you think he's found some shred of clarity, he's still like clawing his way back to the light. It's not a, one and done, whoa, I see the light and I'm there now. It wasn't that. It was a labyrinth.
You bring up a good point about the will of the Force. Does that mean that everything is predestined? Does that mean that you can't make choices? But there's a caveat in that, and I think George Lucas said it best when he was talking about the Journal of the Wills and this microbiotic world of the Force. And it's the fact that the midichlorians allowed the wills to speak to the people who are sensitive to hear them and act as vehicles for them. But I think the best way to think about it, this is speculative on my for me, is that while they do have a will and you have midichlorians that allow you to listen to its will, it's not something that is rigid in nature. It's something that they're like, it's more suggestive, I think. You're listening to the will of the Force, and it's suggesting what what you need to do in order for it to enact its will, and how you go about executing it is entirely up to you. Like a lot of times in Rogue One, I thought that Chirrut was exacting everything as he planned in terms of like hearing the will of the Force. But he was just doing it in the best way he knew how, which was to help Jyn, right? So a lot of the narrative around the story of Star Wars would make you think that the will of the Force wants you to move in a certain direction, but how you get there is entirely up to you. So
it's like taking interstates or back roads.
Yeah.
Destination remains the same, maybe.
Yeah, and I mean the way I've seen it is that the Force itself, yes, it has a will, but it doesn't mean that it has a specific plan for you. It means that it's going to keep calling this out. It's going to keep trying to guide and funnel things towards a specific endpoint. But it's still up to the character whether or not they're going to accept the call, or how far they're going to run the ball up the field. You know what I mean? So, because obviously, if it was in full control, then we would never have darkness. Light would never have any issues, because that would all be prevented. That's not the case. It's trying to correct itself. But yeah, it's not predestined.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think if it was predestined, more so than having will, the Force would have the ability to act on its own. It would have autonomy, right? So if it wanted to destroy the Jedi Order in the prequels and plunge the galaxy into darkness, it would have done that, but it didn't. It was a choice that Anakin made, that although the will of the Force was signaling that the Jedi Order had become corrupt, and had taken the wrong path in aligning itself with the corrupt government, Anakin was the vehicle for that, but he had also opened up the gateways for the Empire to just take its place. So it was kind of like this pendulum that swung back and forth. It's like, oh, the Jedi Order is we have to correct the Jedi Order. Okay, wait. Here's Palpatine. It's back to the dark side. So it was always in motion, and I think having a will and having the autonomy to act on that will is two different things, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's absolutely something malleable. And it was interesting how it was presented in almost or suggested to be rigid here, and like you were mentioning. And so I think that's what's so interesting about this comic, is because you do have to be an active audience. You cannot be just wanting entertainment, you know? Like, I mean, yes, it was entertaining, but I think that's what's so beautiful about Star Wars in and of itself, is you can be entertained and like, wow, laser swords and cool monsters and the eye, nightmare fuel. But you can also look at it and analyze it and pick pieces apart and put the puzzle together. And just the idea of being able to be an active audience and what we all gleaned from this comic, and just how, like, I have 75 notes, you know, I'm throwing papers everywhere. I feel like, you know, that, I don't know what TV show it's from, but you know, the meme where he's like against the wall and he's like pointing at things.
Oh,
you know
it's always sunny. Yeah, Pepe.
Oh, okay,
Sylvia.
yeah. I've never watched it. I'm sorry, but that's what I feel like.
Just can we appreciate how cunning and how tenacious Vader is? Like, first of all, this gauntlet that he's going through without you having to use the Force, and then just I feel like the comic opens up the mind of Maddie the Archivist and just gets all of those species out and throws them at Vader in this issue. You know, yeah. I think we had a Rogwart, and we have all kinds of like esoteric creatures that. Wait, are these creatures native to Mustafar? What are they doing here? Mm-hmm. Do you think they're conjurations?
Perhaps, because like the lava lakes, you know, and the idea of hallucinations.
Right.
So maybe.
But
maybe, I don't know. All of those fights could have been in his mind.
Do you think so, Chaco?
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know, because you know, he got his new gripper arm, and he was still rocking that afterwards. And by the way, Vader with a shield is awesome. That was just really cool. But yeah, I like how when we have like a canon universe and we have start and end points, you would think there would be a finite amount of stories that could be told. This shows us that nope, they can go as wild as they want. And because this is definitely not something I expected, and I'm super happy we got. Also, briefly, I'm really happy to see the giant stand up at the end, and you're like, oh, there is a body under there, and he's kind of yoked, you know, like.
That's true. Mm-hmm. There's definitely a lot of stories to be told. Think about the show 24 and how a full season was just 24 hours. And if we have a year gap between two stories and you want to do an in-between show, just the whole season takes place over 3 days.
Yeah.
You know, it's as simple as that, really.
Oh, the idea of the test. Do you think you passed it or failed it? What did you think about that?
I see. In order for me to determine or render a verdict on whether he passed it, I would need to know what the test was.
Yeah.
There was a lot of questions about choice, and and then at the end he was like, "Do you think you passed this test?" And I still don't. I can't like wrap my head around what he was testing him for. Was it an actual test, or if the test was just for him to walk through everything and just show up in front of him and grab the Wayfinder? I don't know. If you guys have any insights, I couldn't glean it.
I mean, I didn't. Yeah, I don't have anything definitive to say, but. To me, it was very much the test doesn't matter. Like, test or no test, I am forging my path through this. If I have to go through you, I will. And so I think that was Palpatine's ultimate test. Was, you came from this order where you're having to follow all these rules and these guidelines and do all these things. Right now, there's none. What are you gonna do? Are you the self-starter Sith Lord who's gonna murder everything in his path, or are you gonna wait for my permission, or what? What's gonna give you the most strength? And so that's kind of what that's how I'm feeling. And also, I'm just fascinated by Ochi as well. Like, what does this guy know? He's like, oh, you went to the... Most people don't survive, and you got a wayfinder. Like, how do you know all of this stuff?
Yeah.
He's a Sith assassin. You must have inside information.
Yeah.
What I want to know is if Palpatine just treats him as an assassin, or if there's a little bit more to that relationship with Ochi, because he had that ancient Sith dagger.
That's really interesting. Yeah, it definitely opens up a lot of complexity in that. As far as the test, I again had nothing definitive, and like you were saying, like, it didn't really matter. But I liked how the final two lead-ins were what you want, what you need, or does it even matter? If you've been chosen, who cares what you choose? And I think that has like a lot to play with Darth Vader eventually finding identity and personage again, because like we were talking about in the Return of the Jedi podcast, he'd lost a lot of personage in that the name Anakin no longer has any meaning for me, like that name. And so just the idea of like in the Phantom Menace, when he says, when he's asked, are you a slave? And he says, no, I'm a person and my name is Anakin. He clung to the idea of who he is, and you saw him be like his personage could elevate him into something more, and he had abilities to determine who that was and why that was significant. And I think in so many ways this gives us a glimpse into him finding that again, because he cares what he chooses. And when he looks at his son and he sees himself in his eyes, and he sees the woman he loves in his smile. I'm being poetic, but he looks at him and he did not, throw Palpatine down an elevator shaft for hate. He did it for Luke, for love. And so the idea of like, who cares what you choose? He chose. And while no, it was not a split-second decision, and it had a lot of complexity leading up to it for him, I think it's showing us the pieces and the seeds that are being sown. And so I think ultimately, no, the test here didn't matter, but I kind of was like, he failed it. If this person is like an agent of the dark side, he failed it, which is a good thing. It's
always interesting to think about, what if the point of a test is to fail it? And what if less than a test, it's more just revelatory for you? And now I'm starting to wonder what would happen to the divide between Vader and Anakin if his test was with Bendu instead of Eye of Webbish Bog. What could Bendu reveal to Darth Vader? Because you think about how he speaks to Kanan, and he's just so like, the Jedi and the Sith, you all are stupid.
Yeah.
He tries out, I'm Darth Vader, and then Bendu is like, you're nothing to the larger force. Get out of my sight, child. Do you think Bendu
could drop in the ocean?
Yeah. Do you think Bendu could extract Anakin from Darth Vader if he had the chance?
I think Vader would try to kill Bendu.
Yeah.
I'm the Bendu. I don't care. try to stab him and stuff.
I will say anyone, that might be listening to this that has not read the comics or is thinking about reading the comics, that if I wasn't a Vader stan before this run, I would be now. And
Absolutely.
The comics I feel are some of, in my opinion, my favorite Star Wars media. And that's saying a lot. But I would say the comics as a whole might be some of my favorite Star Wars media. Notice how I went back to some.
So, quick lightning round. If we had a Darth Vader movie, which run? Which run would you want?
2015. Everyone says 2017 because it's the idea of him becoming Vader. But I think we've seen enough of... no, we haven't seen enough. But we've seen a good deal of that Darth Vader. We've seen him powerful. Yes, I love to see him hunting down Jedi, and maybe even, I don't know, just like the 2017 run is pretty brutal. But I would say 2015 because I think that's the first times like we see. I don't know. I love the character struggle, and I think that makes him such a deep character, and the idea of like the whole Silo arc. I would really like that on screen, not only just because of Tulan Void Gazer. I love her. But I think it's really cool to see him, that's another seed of his choice with like saving Luke, is like the idea that Silo presents them as his children and his legacy, and he has another legacy at the end of the run. Shocker, Luke is his child. And so we'd see kind of that. I don't know. I think we see him struggle a bit and the depth of his character begin to emerge, and we see the seeds that create Return of the Jedi and make it so wow,
I have to fully agree. I was going to say 2015 as well. That's my preferred run. 2017 is simpler and easier to tell. So if they did, that's probably what they would do. But there's a lot of other implications from 2015, especially, when he meets Silo's children and he talks to Palpatine about it. And he's like, these are abominations. And like, these are abominations. You're mostly metal, dude. Like, what are you? What do you think you are? Like, you have severely disappointed me in that failure. And I think that is an interesting dynamic to play around with, as well as being able to watch Vader do what he can to circumvent the Emperor and try to build have his own droid army and do all these things. I think just developing the actual relationship between Vader and Palpatine would be a really fascinating study to have on screen.
I'm in complete agreement, except for one thing. I think you would need a trilogy for 2015. And for 2017, you could possibly do one movie and just kind of pick his arc with trying to get his kyber crystal and becoming Darth Vader. But if we were to have like a trilogy, or at least a series of movies, now that's a spicy little thought, where you would have all of these arcs and just kind of go through all of these runs. I think even 2020 would be a sad movie.
I couldn't handle it. Y'all better have the hospital on speed dial. I couldn't handle it.
Okay. Also, if just real quick, if we did do 2017, something I think would also be a very compelling film is basically the whole thing on Mon Cala. I mean, so I would like to see this animated specifically because, in the Clone Wars season 4, we got to see all this stuff going on Mon Cala and Anakin's relationship with Lee Char. and seeing how that became the exact opposite, I think would also be a really interesting story.
So moving on to our next segment is going to be a very short and creative little exercise for us. Looking forward to one of the new projects announced by Lucasfilm, Star Wars Visions. 25,000 years of history to explore for anime. Now, the idea of Star Wars anime already in and of itself is a polarizing subject. Because, I mean, it's anime. Just picturing, because Star Wars is its own thing. Star Wars, like the idea and concept of Star Wars is its own thing. Anime is its own thing. It's got its own tropes. It's got its own, genres. So you put the two together, which genre and which trope do you explore? Like, is there an isekai angle that you can do Star Wars in? Who knows? But just this short creative exercise I wanted to do with you guys, like, what is your pitch? If you were to go to Lucasfilm with your Star Wars Visions short film, what would you pitch to them?
So with just the style of anime, I mean, first and foremost, I want to call out that all of the Old Republic books are actually extremely well suited to be told in anime form. Specifically, Fatal Alliance, I think would go really well with that style. But going from there, I need to see some animated stuff in the far reaches of space. In the most recent Thrawn book, we find out that the Sith at one time went up against the Chiss Ascendancy.
Ooh, this is a spoiler alert for me.
It's a passing, it's a throwaway line. It's not going to ruin anything, but we know that they existed out there, and there's a lot. And also, I need to see some Grisks. Yeah, so that's my first pitch is that time period, and then the second one is the obvious one. We need to see stuff about the Jedi. We need to see different people who are learning to wield the Ashla, the Bogan, and the Bendu, and find out what happened. How did this all shake out? And also some young Zepho stories.
Just a whole bunch of lore, huh?
Yeah, that's all I care about.
What about you, Vic?
I would like to see, and this is not based on anything except my own, this would be so cool. I would love to see a show on the Amidalans. And I know that it's not a cool time period that's new and anything, but I think it'd be cool. I also think it might be interesting to see. I want to see Naboo anime. I'm just being honest. So if we did Queen's Shadow and Queen's Peril type anime, I think that'd be cool. I don't have a lot to say. I'm not
those stories are rather well suited for anime, though. Those kind of stories match a genre in anime that doesn't necessarily need to revolve around lore, and I think they match. And I'm in agreement with Chaco here. There's a lot of lore to explore with anime, because you don't have the same live action restraints to displays of the Force and what you could show with 2D, or if they went 3D anime, that would be awesome too. But I think this is probably, this was probably predicted by Chaco. I want to see the beginnings of the Cold War in the Old Republic and the lead up to the Treaty of Coruscant, where we get to see a young Satele Shan working her way through the politics and working her way through masters to become a knight, and get this early look at who the person I call Luke before Luke, who's burdened with this high expectation of continuing the legacy of Bastila and battle meditation and this polarizing Jedi figure. And, as much as I'd like to see the Grandmaster Satele, it's always fun to explore the younger version, the younger Padawan Tonight version of Satele, and I think there's a lot of story there, but of course you'd have to set up the Old Republic to begin with. But yeah, I mean, I'm sticking to my guns. Like, it's an anthology short film thing. We can certainly introduce Satele in the middle of the Old Republic, and it'll be dandy,
Or another thing that just popped into my mind is we could see in anime would be an amazing storytelling to tell the origin of General Grievous. To watch this warrior rise, to hit his peak, but ultimately get destroyed by Jedi and start augmenting himself to try and get better and better and better until he becomes something else entirely.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, what else they could do as well? This also popped into my head right now. They have a lot of Forces of Destiny they could do anime, like lengthened anime feature films on. Would I love to see a film with Ahsoka learning lightsabers from Yoda? Give me 2 hours of that. I don't care. I will watch 2 hours of him instructing Ahsoka on Jarkai. I don't care. I don't care if other people would be bored about that. Give me 2 hours of Luke setting up traps with Ewoks on Endor. Give us the mission.
2 hours of Han arguing with Hera over whose ship is faster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give us the mission that they went on, Anakin and Padme, where Ahsoka was like, "I know about you two," but we didn't get the mission.
You guys make a good team. Yeah.
Okay, I think we can move on from here. That was a fun little creative exercise. Definitely a lot to look forward to with Star Wars Visions. Just anime and all of the studios that they're going to tap to make these. Like, again, this is popping in right now. I'm picturing like an Attack on Titan Star Wars type of thing. Oh my gosh, it's just...
And they have to fight Eye of Webbish Bog.
Yes! Yes! I get those vibes a lot.
Now I want everything to have the Eye of the Webbish Bog. Everything. Every Star Wars content. Just show up.
Man. A Tokyo Ghoul style Sith anime. There's the possibilities are endless, Oh
yeah.
I've never seen Tokyo Ghoul. Should I watch it?
Yes. Absolutely. Welcome to ASMR Dyad in the Force podcast. You should watch Tokyo Ghoul.
I like it. I'm for it. Yeah. So much different things that you can play around with, especially that with these time periods. I love expanding it more than, I always say this, but some of the stuff that we are going to get in the High Republic as well, because so far there has not been an official announcement of a show, so they could also bring some of these characters to life in anime form, and I think it'll hit different and it'll get more people to hop in and start reading these books.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point to raise, because the High Republic initiative has officially begun, right? And within the next couple of weeks, we're gonna get our first High Republic, and it's coming more and more into view because of the timing, right? And so we have a couple of interviews to react to from High Republic authors. One thing that jumps out at me is, Kevin Scott talking about Keeve Trennis. She is a very promising young Padawan who becomes knighted, and she's a Padawan who's never really expected to find herself in such a central position at Starlight Beacon. And she thought she would be knighted and sent off somewhere to an outpost, and yet just found herself right in the heart of everything with people that to her are heroes. She's the kind of person who does worry about living up to the expectations that she herself gives more than anyone else. The galaxy as a whole expects a lot from the Jedi. She knows this, so she puts loads of pressure on herself to live up to those challenges, and she worries about a lot of things. The Jedi that we're getting from the High Republic, it seems like they're hitting a lot of great, like, overall, like, diverse notes with these people.
This one is giving me some Kamala Khan vibes, some Miss Marvel vibe, which I love that character so much. But to have someone inside, for us to be able to see their order from the inside through the eyes of a Padawan that just got knighted, we've never seen this. We've never seen. We saw Obi-Wan get knighted, and then we jump.
Yeah.
We don't see Anakin get knighted. He just is at some point in time. We've never seen this in any medium.
And I think that's one of the biggest implications of this time period, right? Is just the workings of the Jedi Order. We're no longer jumping into Jedi Master or Jedi Knight. It's like, just like with High Republic Adventures with Yoda, we're seeing Padawans, and this was there was a small morsel of this in Clone Wars, but we're getting to see Yoda going on missions with Padawans, and seeing all of these narratives play out is so interesting. At the height of the Jedi Order, we're going to get an even larger or smaller, depending on how you see it, microscope into the Jedi Order and how they operate in this time. And although I can't find the exact answer right now, I do want to talk about how they hint at the idea that the cracks in the foundation of the Jedi Order are there for their fall. And even though they're present, it's still the height of the Jedi Order and the height of the Republic. And it's interesting to think about how they could portray such a narrative of the golden age of the Republic and the Jedi, but the ingredients are there for disaster.
Yeah, I liked that note too about seeing the Jedi as peacemakers and peacekeepers rather than we see them a lot as soldiers in the prequels. And so seeing what that looks like. And then I think I'm having trouble finding exactly what that is, where that is in this interview as well. But the idea of how they live with others, not just in their temple, on Coruscant, just seeing in the outer reaches of the galaxy how the Jedi fit into the greater culture of the galaxy. I think that's something that's a really big implication of this as well, is like how they live and work and serve with everybody else, and what people, like others' relationships to the Jedi. Oh, that was a really cool implication. And then also just the idea that we're getting more species. And I'm so excited about that. Just because, I mean, the sky's the limit, really, and like the expansiveness of the Star Wars universe. And then, Kevin Scott made a comment on like not being a big fan of monocultures in Star Wars. And like it's so beautiful that we're getting that played out.
That's an important thing to think about. Yeah. We have a Trandoshan Jedi skier. And even in the Light of the Jedi, right? We had a Rodian, we had a Twi'lek. It overall makes sense. It's kind of like the whole movement of films today where everything is just being made to look like the world it is today, right? In the galaxy far, far away, why would every single Jedi we know is a human or close to a human?
I have a question. So if you look at that article, right, there is that image of looks like a sparring match with Skier. And looking at her lightsaber, it's beautiful. Let's just call that out right now. But
there's gonna be so much.
Does that look like if you twist it, it'll separate and be two sabers? Because in the center, I mean, I'm betting that's gonna happen. And because I noticed that the blades are also they seem to be a little shorter than normal, but I would love to see her twist and go at people.
Can we talk about also that he's a one-armed Jedi? I've seen other panels where this isn't just like the drawing itself. I've seen other panels where he's missing an arm.
And then on that note, right before the panel was the idea. It said, I think we're seeing in Keeve a more human side to the Jedi.
Yeah.
And we're seeing like internal dialogue. And I think that's a really exciting thing, at least to a lot of fans. It's exciting to see that, the Jedi don't have to be like, I am perfectly making this right decision and never struggled making this right decision all the time, So it's cool to see.
We definitely got, small morsels of that with Anakin and Obi-Wan throughout the Clone Wars, but just to see just how each of these Jedi think about everything, and just like you mentioned, the state of the Jedi in this time period is so, it's kind of like the concept of Citadel or the Ivory Towers concept, where when we meet them in the prequels, it's kind of like everyone is brought back to Coruscant and they train on Coruscant, and that's their ivory towers. But in the High Republic, it seems like, and Chaco has pointed this out in the past as well, it seems like there are frontier Jedi, there are temples out in the frontier and on the Outer Rim, and this is kind of echoing, some social commentary here, where you would have kind of like community policing, where you would have a lot more of a local force that's representative of the community versus, an ivory tower situation where all the police are there in one place and they're supposed to know the locals. They're supposed to know the community in that way and serve that community without being among them. And so it'd be interesting to see the inner dialogue or the internal dialogue of Jedi out in the frontier, Jedi in the Outer Rim, who didn't train in Coruscant. They trained in the Jedi Temple in the Outer Rim, and they know the locals, they know the culture, and they're culturally in the know. And so they don't have that same kind of like detachment from compassion. Yeah,
there's a note from the story group that these are the Jedi who notice the small people. Yes. I was trying to find it because I when you were saying that, I was like, I remember just reading that, but I love that. Yeah, it's getting me really super hype. I guess I represent a little bit more of the fan who I did not read any Legends content. I did not immerse myself in any Legends content. And so it's interesting, like, I guess from my perspective, I have a different perspective in that I'm not already in love with this era. I'm not already in love with the ideas that are, but this is new to me. And so for a lot of fans, that's how this is like a totally new thing to fall in love with. And so this has given me a little bit more connection to that, because I think this is super exciting, more Star Wars, but I wasn't emotionally like, I'm gonna fall in love with this, So of course I'm gonna fall in love with it as Star Wars, but you know what I mean. I'm not wording myself really well, but
No, it makes perfect sense. I mean, especially now that since this is a whole it's a brave new world, right? This isn't we have no preconceived notions. There's no because one thing that I see happen a lot of times is people will come into something with specific assumptions, and then when those are not met, that's when they are disappointed. This, you shouldn't be able to have any of those assumptions, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like as much as I have not read too much, I feel like I know the world like quite well already. You know, I'm looking forward to Belzettifar, Ty Yorik's story. I'm looking forward to Lula Talasola. I'm like, and then now Keeve Trennis. I feel like I don't know. There's a part of me that has not read these books and comics yet, and I'm just like totally engaged in where they could go from here. I'm definitely engaged with Yoda's story and him being younger and training his Padawans and actually being out on missions with them. But like this world, they've done a great job with this High Republic initiative, where you kind of know the world and the universe surrounding its existence already. And I've only read an 8-chapter excerpt from Light of the Jedi, but I feel like I know this world.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm reading this this one piece from the article from the interview about the Starlight Beacon. You know, it's huge. It's huge. It's one of the original ideas for the Starlight Beacon was that we were talking about a mobile temple at one point. Hold on. Like, it's a mass of Republic staff where there's medical, scientific, or support, and then you have a huge Jedi temple. It's a mobile Jedi temple. What do you see in that?
The Death Star.
I was gonna say the Watchtower
that
from Justice
too.
League.
But I'm also getting huge Starforge, vibes from this too. Now, granted, the Starforge wasn't a mobile Jedi temple, but it was still kind of like this huge monolith that the galaxy kind of, honed in on during that time. But man, we thought we were only getting gold trim and electrum plating and white Jedi robes.
Yep.
No, we're getting like Jedi over here, Jedi over there, temple over here, temple over there, a floating Jedi temple. I'm so excited. I'm so excited for this whole era.
Yeah, I am too. I like there was also, I keep trying to find quotes because when you're talking, I was like, this is exactly. So the idea that, telling stories about Jedi who aren't doomed, who aren't in the midst of a tragic fall, it's something very important right now to imagine what it looks like when institutions are supposed to protect and uplift us when they actually do. Yeah. And so just the idea of the Jedi and like, I'm so excited to see what that looks like.
Yeah. And in the midst of the Drengr, there's also a piece in the article where they say that the Drengr have the affinity towards the dark side. So remember back in our first little, rumblings about who the Drengr could be if they're Force sensitive. Guys, this is our...
Yeah.
The Drengr is a Force sensitive dark side plant.
Yep. Terrifying.
I like, I mean, let's get wild with it. But that it also means a lot as well, because now, let's say this is it's driven by the dark side, and its goal is to feed on the light, and it feels its strongest from Coruscant, and is trying to get there, no matter what. And how do you fight it? How do you stop it? And I don't know, we'll see.
It giving me huge Alien vibes.
Yes.
you know, maybe Predator at some point, maybe to a certain extent. But could you imagine like the Drengr come to Coruscant and it's just like a hunting ritual? No, it's not. They're just monstrous beings. I did want to point out this little piece from Claudia Gray when she's talking about her book. In response to, you know, aspects of the High Republic lore, she talks about how exciting it is to look at the High Republic as the Republic at its height, the Jedi at their height, at a time when everything is working like it should. It's what Obi-Wan Kenobi described to Luke in A New Hope, but it's very much not what he lived through himself. In both the prequels and the Clone Wars, we see that the cracks that are going to shatter the Republic are very much already in place, even before the Phantom Menace begins. But this isn't to say that the High Republic is perfect or that the Jedi within them are. It's also not to say that conflicts won't arise to disturb that peace. And then the one thing that I'm like latching onto is the idea that Obi-Wan Kenobi and even Jedi of the Republic era, did they at some point think that their order was the golden age of Jedi? And maybe perhaps they had this kind of sense of arrogance with them?
I mean, they say it, you know, for 1,000 years, the Jedi have like stood strong and all this stuff.
Yeah. And
you're like, okay, but you are not strong because of how long your predecessors were strong before you. And yeah, they just couldn't see it.
I agree. I think that there is, you know, the air of hubris that they thought that they were a part of something. I guess like what I mean by that is that just because they were Jedi doesn't mean that they were completely shielded from corruption. And I think maybe they were comfortable in that state saying, oh, we're Jedi. And that like the legacy of the Jedi is greatness. At that point it had been. So it's interesting to see how they might, and I mean, it's understandable how they might have been clouded in their view of themselves.
Yeah. The pristine and infallible.
Mm-hmm.
Man, the High Republic.
Let's go.
I'm all in, man. All in.
I'm so excited.
So we're all in for the High Republic. In 2 weeks, the first book comes out, and then the next month after that, that's Claudia Gray's Into the Dark. We're also going to have, you know, Rising Storm, A Test of Courage, High Republic Adventures. Man, the breadth and the behemoth that is Lucasfilm when it comes to publishing with Marvel, IDW, and Random House and all these books. It's like, I know Chaco, you've said already they've eclipsed Legends in terms of like the volume of books and material and comics.
And quality, in my opinion, as well.
Yeah, that's not something you say lightly. That's pretty bold. Them's fighting words from Chaco.
You know, I do get people who say, "Oh, so you're saying that Aftermath is better than?" No, I'm not saying that. but overall, I mean, how can you lose, especially when you are grabbing the best authors from Legends and having them work on more stuff and giving them more freedom, and you know, it's just a winning formula. I mean, April of 2014, right? We've had 6 years, and where are we now? Like 70, in the 70s when it comes to novels alone. And so, yeah, the volume is there, and what's shocking is that the quality is there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm safe in saying that the new canon material is largely, more often than not, more consistent and less convoluted. You step a foot inside Legends today, you won't know which direction you need to go in. Whereas here, you can read Lost Stars, Bloodline, Dark Disciple, Master and Apprentice, and know exactly where you are.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is personally for me, Legends goes off in some wild trajectories. Like there's no way you can vector the stories, at least without being like full on reading everything.
So that is absolutely my experience. So I'm what was my count at last? 128 Legends books, and that's kind of how it started, because I realized like Legends, my favorite character, Jaina Solo, obviously comes from Legends, but the majority of the books were about these very specific people and its different stories with them. So depending on the story, their voice can be a little change, or the writing may be a little off or different. Doesn't hurt the characters, and like I said, I love the characters. But that's also something to say about the quality of the stories. You kind of get tricked because you love the characters so much that you like reading these different story adventures. But going back, the Dark Nest trilogy was not great. I don't like the Yuuzhan Vong at all. Like there's a bunch, but I enjoyed watching Jaina's journey through them.
Yeah.
Just like I'm not a big fan of the first Aftermath book, but I love Mr. Bones, and I would love to see walking through those adventures. It's kind of the same deal.
Yeah. I'm so glad that Timothy Zahn is in charge of Thrawn. And there's no one to dip their toes in that.
Yeah, for me, I think this whole, since 2014, like Star Wars lore has become more accessible. Like you were saying, like where you are and where it should be. And I know that like I can only speak on my experience, and that vastly differs from others. But growing up, I felt like I wasn't allowed to know or like Star Wars lore. And so talking about Star Wars was something that I was like, okay, well, I can't talk about Star Wars. Even like I would not even label myself as a Star Wars fan growing up, even though I loved it. I watched all the films. I went to Star Wars weekend with my family. I won my little Star Wars trivia contest at Disney World. Like I loved Star Wars. And so I think for me, seeing what has happened since 2014, like Chaco, you've heard me talk about this a few times, but one of my dance students, she's 10 years old and she got a Star Wars book for her birthday. And I am so happy that Star Wars is there. Like she was talking about lore at the bar while we were at at the ballet bar. And just for that, I am so thankful, because that was not my experience growing up. And so get to see a 10-year-old girl feel like she can be a part of Star Wars lore is what this should be about. I know that there are many that feel that a fandom's exclusivity is what makes it important and awesome, but I know, the three of us value Star Wars for its inclusivity and the idea that everyone can be a Star Wars fan, and I want everyone to love Star Wars. I get excited when people are introduced to it, and I know that all of us are that way. And so I'm very, very excited for like all of these books, all of these shows, everything that's happening, if only because we are getting new Star Wars fans every day.
Yeah. And we have people that we know as well who are sharing their Christmas presents. They got Dark Disciple, Master Apprentice. They're getting Star Wars books. I'm like, hell yes. Before you'd be seeing just other things. I can't think off the top. You'd see other things, but to have friends out there who got Star Wars books for their Christmas is just spectacular. And exclusivity is the province of clubs. This isn't a club. This is a fandom. Everyone's welcome to this fandom. There is no sign-up sheet. There is no roster quota or cap limit. That's what it is, man. You can't. This isn't a club. There's no treehouse clubhouse. There's no room for all of us. There's room for everybody. And to go into this next topic that we're going to discuss, considering the divide of the fandom right now. Chaco, if you can kind of, I guess read the thread. There's this interesting Twitter thread from someone that was talking about Luke.
Yeah. So this is something I saw on Twitter. It's from a guy named Alden Diaz, and he actually has his own Star Wars podcast. I actually plan to reach out to him because I like how he thinks. But
yes,
and I'm sure you can put a link to the thread in the video. But I mean, he starts out by saying it honestly blows my mind that some people don't see or don't want to see how Luke Skywalker in The Mandalorian connects so beautifully to Luke in The Last Jedi. It adds emphasis to so much of what The Last Jedi is. When we see Luke in The Last Jedi, he's broken because of a fall from grace we didn't see. But we understand that it's because the heights he fell from were so great. He distanced himself from the Skywalker of old because he sees himself as a microcosm of what failed, of a failed way of life. He speaks multiple times about the inherent pressure and the fallibility of his legendary status. He even goes so far to say that you don't need Luke Skywalker. You think, what? I'm going to walk out with a laser sword and face down the whole First Order? And the question is, why is that line relevant? Is he insinuating that he couldn't do that? Of course not. The point is he could. The point is that there was a large period of time where he probably would, very dramatically and with a heroic intensity fitting a legend. And building off of that, the question for Luke becomes threefold. What did that get me? What did that get my family? And what did that get the galaxy? We're witnessing the man gain mythical status and aura that make him feel invincible. It's underlining his fall. It's not just that, the hubris within his knighthood, it's also his belief that he can continue the tradition without being doomed to any cyclical consequences. It is so important that the story shows us Ahsoka refuting the old ways, refusing to take Grogu, but Luke does.
I mean, there's a lot more to the thread, but
I mean, I feel like that's a good place to stop. And I think you guys, anyone who's interested in it, should check it out because it does. It's pretty eye-opening.
Yeah, I'll put the link in the description below for anyone that's listening to this entire thread. But you could write a book with this thread, and it would be New York Times bestseller. Like. I've always held this perspective of Luke as someone who loves The Last Jedi and who loves what they did to his character. And I know a lot of people didn't like it, but, I got it the first time. The first time he's talking about him failing because he was Luke Skywalker, no legend. I knew from the very moment he said those words, he was like, yep, he couldn't live up to this height in which the galaxy had thrust upon him. Someone who was so glorified that his only true failure in life was the one that knocked him down the most. And he had all these micro failures and stuff with Vader and his obstacles with the original trilogy. But barring all of that or past all of that, after Return of the Jedi, as a Jedi Knight and going on to be a Jedi Master, he had largely been infallible. And that's how the galaxy saw him. That's how the audience sees him. You know, we see these are arguments against The Last Jedi's Luke with he wouldn't do that, he saw good in Vader. And people forget Rey said the same thing. And Luke addressed it the same way. I was a legend. Exactly. I saw good in Vader. But I couldn't see it in Kylo. I couldn't see it in Ben. And, you know, even though he never tried to kill Ben, you know, he ignited his saber and recoiled within a half a second. He still had to live with the consequence of it. And that's something that's jarring for a lot of people to come to terms with. The reality of living with the consequences of something that you didn't mean.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Luke didn't mean to ignite his saber, but that was an impulse that he had to control. But unfortunately, Ben saw it as a threat, as an aggression.
And it's an impulse that we've seen him have often in every film.
Mm-hmm.
And just to close out this mini rant about this, is the more, and I keep saying this, the more audiences say, not my Luke wouldn't do that, the more you're proving his entire point.
Mm-hmm.
Because the guy that failed in the audience that says the guy couldn't fail, you're literally telling this story for him. Mm-hmm. It's a great thread.
Yeah, it's exceptional. This thread also helped me kind of connect something I did not want to connect because, and I hate to say it, but it made me think about Casterfo from Bloodline in many ways, because it was this idea of, and it's interesting that he's collecting facts as well, just like Casterfo's collection of the Empire.
Yeah.
And saying it wasn't the system, it was a few bad people. And I think that in many ways, this thread helped me make that connection, as far as like the depth of Luke's fall, and kind of his failures in his hubris, thinking that he can take these collections and create his little Jedi order, but the cyclical nature of these systems failing, and not the people themselves. And I thought that was really powerful. And this thread, just as a whole, yes, like we cannot hype it up enough. It's exceptional. And, you know, like you said, like when I first saw it, in many ways I understood this before, when The Last Jedi, I mean, I understood it because I get a lot of questions, as probably not even like half as many as you guys do, but about how do I feel about Luke in The Last Jedi? And I get that question a good deal. I mean, especially for a person that only makes Darth Vader content, but I do get that question a bit. How do I feel about it? When I first saw it, I was pretty like, yeah, that's how it happened. I didn't have any strong feelings because I wasn't like, oh gosh, I hate this. This is not Luke. Because to me, it did make sense. Like what he was saying about having this hype around him, being all of these expectations. In many ways, like I feel like the Anakin and the Chosen One thing, the expectations and the like, you need to be these certain things. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. He has to be Luke Skywalker, this guy that saved the galaxy and powerful Jedi, you know, and how that can crush you. You know, I think that was, yeah, this is just a really powerful thread, and I loved how The Mandalorian highlighted and emphasized this fall, because we did see, whoa, Luke walking that hallway scene You know, it's just, yeah, it was wild.
Yeah, I mean, I actually made a video, a stitch recently. It was someone who was talking about specifically that they weren't a big fan of Rey, and I said it's because, you know, Luke fails, and that's what makes him, you know, a relatable character, and Rey doesn't fail. Now, my stitch, I just pointed out all the times that Rey does fail, but what he said about Luke is very true, and it hurts my head that people can say he's relatable because he fails, and then watch The Last Jedi and say, oh, he would never fail. You know,
Yeah.
that's not my Luke. You're like, no, but it was relatable because he fails, and then this one, failure is the greatest teacher. So you don't like it, and yeah, it just kind of boggles my mind. But I love how, you know, like it says in the article, and like we get to see in The Mandalorian, him at the height of his power and building something that we know is going to get torn down.
Yeah.
And the more impressive he is as he builds it, and the bigger he builds it, then the more crushing it'll be when it does get torn down. It's almost like if you were a teacher and there was a school shooting or a bombing or something like that, and you lost your class, that would break you. Now imagine if the person who did it is your nephew who was in your custody, and you had already seen signs of this. You already knew that this was a possibility. Are you at fault because you didn't do enough to stop it? I mean, how could that not break you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, maybe this shows that Luke was doing the, you know, quote unquote right thing, but it was a failure. And so just the idea of like, is the right thing the right thing? And just, I don't know, because I mean, Luke was doing, you know, what he was supposed to do. He was being who he was supposed to be. But like you said, it was still a failure, ultimately, even though he was doing the right thing. And it wasn't necessarily like, oh yeah, I dropped this book, or I messed this up, or, you know, like something like what you would imagine as a failure. Failure doesn't always look like failing the test.
They're temporary setbacks. And my favorite part about The Last Jedi, my most absolute favorite scene in The Last Jedi is him learning a lesson from Yoda yet again. And how much it mirrors Empire Strikes Back. When, you know, when Yoda's lesson, most of all, is to get over this notion that you failed and that you need to avoid everything, or and like how Luke learned in The Rise of Skywalker, it was fear that kept him on the island, and he was, you know, he was mostly capitulating to that fear. But at the outset of that fear, he was trying to avoid a future in which Yoda has always said the future is always in motion, you know. And going back to Empire Strikes Back, when Yoda says, long have I watched this boy, always to the horizon his eyes are, or whatever, always to the horizon he looks. And then in The Last Jedi, he says the same thing. Ah, young Skywalker, always to the horizon, never here, right in front of your nose. So he
Never paying
fails.
attention.
Yeah, he fails, and then of course that burden caused him to fall so hard. But Yoda's ultimate lesson was, yes, you failed. You lost Ben. But what's in front of you now? You cannot lose that. Lose Rey, we must not. So just being able to put that into perspective, just coming out of like, you know, the old people's home and conjuring lightning and just saying, hello, we got someone in need right here. I know you lost Ben, but don't lose this girl. And I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, I mean that's more or less, you know, that's everything I wanted to say about the article. It was just a fantastic read, and I highly recommend everyone goes to the link and checks it out, because it's you know, for those that enjoy The Last Jedi, definitely read it. But for those of you that don't, especially read it. And maybe, you know, if reading this can make you enjoy something more, then why wouldn't you? You know?
Yeah.
Check it out.
I operate on very high emotional pitches. I love something with every fiber of my being. Or I dislike something. I never really hate anything, but I like either love something or I don't. And with The Last Jedi, the first time I saw it, I was like, this was a beautiful movie. I love it because it's Star Wars. Yay! But I wasn't like in love with the movie. And the more, because what I love about Star Wars is the ability to pick at it, and it just gets bigger and bigger the more you dive into it. The Last Jedi is one of my favorite movies to pick at. And because there's so much you see, the more people you talk to, the more information you get, there's more always. And so I'm loving these hints, these seeds that are making, you know, you fall in love with things. Like a lot of people, you know, because I make Darth Vader content, I don't know why people ask me how I feel about the sequels, but I think it's just a Star Wars person thing. Like they're always like, how do you feel about the sequels? Because they want you to make a spicy video, you know?
Yeah.
So I love them. I do. I love them. But the reason I love them is because I had people and like characters and a universe that I loved before that I'm getting to pull out of the sequels and that is enhanced by the sequels. So if you don't find yourself connecting to Rey, Finn, Poe, Holdo, any of the sequel characters, you should love the sequels because of how they highlight what you do. And in many ways, like, to me, that's my argument about why I don't understand not loving Star Wars content, as it highlights the characters and the places and the universe that you love. It's a piece of it. And, you know, like, when people are like, oh, it's not canon, it's like, oh, gosh, like, but to me, if the sequels aren't canon, well, like, you know, if the sequels aren't canon, if I don't have the sequels, I don't get the, like, absolute depth to Luke that I get from the because I watched and loved the sequels. I don't know. To me, it's just like, it enhances so much about a universe you love, even if you're not connecting to that story, that time period, because like a lot of people like the prequel era, and like what this does for what it implies for the prequel era is, you know, astounding. And I think there's something for everyone to love and connect to. It's just a matter of sometimes it's not as, here it is. It's not as obvious. And so you do have to find what you love and connect to. I went on a rant, but that has nothing to do with anything.
I went on that rant with you, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the whole thing.
But that's another reason why I think everyone should read this thread. Love it, hate it, feel ambivalent, have never watched Star Wars in your life, don't know who Luke Skywalker is, read this thread, because to me it's just so telling, because you can find something to love.
Luke also said what we were thinking all this time. It was the Jedi that created Darth Vader. We all thought it. You know, we have all made our videos about how the Jedi Order failed and was corrupted, and Last Jedi is the one that did that in the dialogue. Mm-hmm. It's like, you strip away the myth and look at their deeds, they were largely crappy people. And then you have the gall to do that in a Star Wars movie, to confront the Jedi in that way.
Like you said, we all can acknowledge that the Jedi in the past were off base, right? They were doing something wrong. Something was wrong. And he already knew about this. He tried to start his own, do his own thing as a Jedi, and he ran into the exact same problem. What do? I mean, it seems obvious that, hey, there's something in this is the problem. And I love how he kind of tries to explain that to Rey of, the height of his power. He's Luke Skywalker, the hope of the galaxy. The entire first movie, The Force Awakens, is them looking for the legendary Luke Skywalker, because he's going to come and he's going to save everyone. Rey never thinks that, oh, I could be the savior. No, it's always, okay, let me go get this guy to come save it. Okay, he won't do it. Maybe I can convince Ben to do it, or whatever. And it's just this elevated, status. And then in the same film, we get to watch Kylo Ren, elevate himself, much in that same way, just on the opposite side. It's just just really interesting.
Okay, so to wrap things up here, we are running out of time for this episode, sadly. We are going to be answering some of your guys' questions. This is a fun one. Coleman_Trebor_ asks, you and Darth Chaco really are a dyad, huh?
Yes. Loth.cat asked, what does retcon mean? Word gets thrown around a lot, and I feel in the Star Wars community it is often used incorrectly.
So it means retroactive continuity. I mean, my understanding of it is like something doesn't, there's a contradiction in the continuity, and they have to plug that up somehow, right? Or they are unhappy with something in the continuity, and they will change it retroactively through a story. I think one of the most famous examples was not necessarily something that they did in an actual story, but they had open seasons, and they had a whole comic with Jango Fett being a Mandalorian and having a Mandalorian heritage. And I'm not sure how George Lucas went about it, but I think he came out in public and said that no, they were not Mandalorians, and just kind of definitively put his G-canon stamp on it. At least that's my understanding too for retcon. I know it's used a lot mistakenly. Relevant to what's happening now. People think that seeing Luke all high and mighty is a retcon to TLJ, and we just went over a whole thread saying no, it actually connects beautifully. So
and that's where it kind of can get off base, because the example I always use comes from the Green Lantern, right? For a long time, Green Lanterns couldn't affect things that were yellow. They were weak to the color yellow. In a future comic, they wrote that they were keeping Parallax was imprisoning him inside of their main battery, and that was a yellow impurity caused by that. So the story in the future is a retcon, because they gave the historical context to say this is why this happened. And then when Parallax escaped, then it no longer affected it, right? So it really is, like retroactive continuity. Anytime that you are explaining something from the past that sheds entirely new light on the future event is a retcon. But it doesn't always mean something is being erased.
Yeah, I heard that word most in my content when I posted a video on what Darth Vader was doing when he blocked Luke's lightsaber in Return of the Jedi from striking Palpatine down, and how in the Rise of Skywalker novelization there was the insinuation that he was saving Luke.
Yeah.
And I got that comment a lot. Obviously negatively, saying like, oh, we're not gonna retcon Return of the Jedi. And it's like, that's not a retcon. It's explaining why an action happened and the like inner motives that we weren't privy to at that time. We didn't know. It was a mystery, and now there's insinuation that it's not. And I don't know about you, but I love that. I love seeing, oh, wow, maybe there was more going on inside his head than I thought. You know, it's like, why would you want the boring, bland, upfront answer that's like, oh, he was saving Palpatine because he was a Sith. Like, and then 5 seconds later, he's not. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. So it's just, you know, oh, well, I could get get.
There's a fine but distinct line between retcon and filling in the gaps.
Yes.
It would be a retcon if in Return of the Jedi he said, I want you to be my apprentice. And then in Rise of Skywalker, he's like, I made the offer for him to take over as the Emperor. You know, that would be retconning the whole entire proposal. But there was none. He's like, strike me down. You can theoretically presume that he's provoking him to do this so that he could take over his body.
Yep.
Eric Boots Ma 1 asks, why did Kanan get his sight back in Rebels before his death?
For a long time, I completely forgot that even happened. But it felt like a gift from the Force, like this last moment of clarity. You know, because of his selfless act. I didn't get like vibes of, oh, it's because of a certain gas that's burning, it just heals eyes or whatever. You know, but that's where I fall down on it. I don't have a solid answer.
I have a fluffy answer.
Give us the fluff.
So, you know, at the very end of his life, Anakin says, just for once, let me look on you with my own eyes. And just the idea of clarity and the light side, like you were saying, being able to see something with the eyes of light, and seeing something through a lens of clarity. And when Obi-Wan says, reach out with your feelings in his first training with Luke. Just the idea that we're able to see that physical shift, that he was reaching out with his feelings and wanted to see her one more time. And so, I don't know, that's to me the answer. And just the idea that there is clarity, that you will know when you're at peace. And he was at peace with his decision. That's probably the hardest I cried in all of Star Wars, all things considered. It's doozy.
My answer is, it builds upon lore more. The more we learn about it, that was in my opinion, that was the beginning stages of becoming one. And what we know about people who are one with the Force is that they have an all-seeing eye, right? They have a vision of the future. They have the vision of the past and the present and everything that's going to ever happen in the universe, in the galaxy. And before you become one, there are certain tiers of Force sensitivity. And we know that Anakin had double vision. And if you think about how being sensitive to the Force and through training, you can attain certain visions, and certain reflexes, and certain foresight. on the precipice of becoming one, on the verge of your own death, when you're giving yourself selflessly and on the light side. It's just the beginning of him gaining his all sight, I'm going to call it. So right before he died, he saw Hera, and then he saw Jason, and he saw his whole future. The future that, Qui-Gon saw for Obi-Wan when he appeared to Obi-Wan.
Sienna Bailey. But the question was, what's my favorite must-have piece of Vader merch? And we can just say like Star Wars merch, but for me, my Vader merch, I have to say the Instant Pot. I haven't used it yet, but the Instant Pot, I think that's when people finally are like, oh, this girl's too deep. Because it's like, t-shirts and stuff, you're like, yes, they love Star Wars. Like a Black Series figure, you're like, yeah, they really love Star Wars. Then a Darth Vader Instant Pot. Oh. So, I don't know. Maybe that is probably my favorite. I got the little bendy Vader from Galaxy's Edge. And it's like, I just love it so much. It gives me so much serotonin. It like dances. It's in my other apartment, or I'd show it to you.
It'd be so meta if you had an Anakin toaster.
Oh, it would. It would. I'll be on the lookout. You guys tag me if you see any.
Must have Star Wars merch.
So it's must have or that I already have.
Let's say that you already have.
A lightsaber for sure.
I mean, your lightsaber is beautiful.
But you gotta be able to light one up, man. Even those 3-prong ones that you get from Toys R Us, you gotta have one. You gotta be able to have a lightsaber duel with your siblings or with your friends.
Absolutely. For me, I love my the Black Series action figure. I have a Thrawn one, and it is awesome. Still haven't opened it up or anything, but he's beautiful in his Grand Admiral whites, and I love it. Just makes me happy.
Now, what's the one you don't have but you want?
Oh, so many. All of them.
All of the things.
A Satil Sean body pillow.
Right, we'll keep our eyes open.
I don't think it exists, otherwise it would be on my wish list.
I want a kegerator that looks like R2-D2. And it has like a little spout on top, like when he's on the pleasure barge. So I want R2-D2 to give me cold beer. That's what I want.
So at the Rise of Skywalker premiere, I have him right here. They had a popcorn bucket. Do you guys have that one? The R2 popcorn bucket? Okay, hang on.
I almost bought an R2 mini fridge.
And you didn't?
No,
that is why you fail.
I honestly couldn't afford it at the time. I was like, oh man, I really want this.
So he is a popcorn bucket. I have a candy stash back here. Handy. And then you can his top, and it was a drink. Put a straw in it.
Oh man.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
That's almost like the one that I was going to get. It was a mini fridge, and it had room for 2 cans.
That's so cool.
But it was between that and getting an actual mini fridge that had room for 24 bottles.
I get that.
Yeah.
But
practicality.
In the future, I would definitely have an R2 on my desk for 2 cans of whatever. I have cans of at that point because I don't really drink cans.
Donald Edward Allison plainly asks, how does Grogu know how to force heal?
Well, we do know this wasn't part of the curriculum on Coruscant. But, there's a lot we still don't know. there's a couple of things we know about their species. They're powerful. The 3 we know are Jedi. 2 of them are masters. And then the other thing we know,
Masters on the council, no less.
Yeah. And the other thing that we know is that they remain in infancy for the first 5 decades, and then growth spurt. They're in their teenage years in the next couple of years. So, I mean, given that he is only 50 and theoretically still an infant, I would imagine it's simply, their species is hugely powerful in the Force, and instinctually just kind of mama bared that, They were like, oh, let me see this wound, and then did some Force stuff with it.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, yeah, my theory was quite similar, because, like we said, he is an infinite. Or a baby or small child, right? We've seen children use Force telekinesis. We've seen, Ezra instinctively can communicate with animals and living creatures. That's not something he was taught how to do, right? So it stands to reason this isn't something that was taught. It's something that was instinctual, and maybe because of the child's care for others and its intent for care, that it was able to manifest this uniquely. So, and of course, Rey learning it in the future. I'm curious now if, Luke found the ability somewhere. We know Rey learned from the texts that were left, right? Did Luke reverse engineer after seeing Grogu do it? Did Luke, while exploring, find Grogu's homeworld, the homeworld of their species, and learn it there? I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities. We don't know, but what I can say is that, like you said, it is not part of the curriculum, and it doesn't affect it doesn't affect Anakin at all.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw my video on that, but the response to Force healing ruining Darth Plagueis. There's a large difference between immortality and healing, but I don't think Luke reverse engineered it. It says that the very properties of that technique that Rey used was actually used to mend kyber crystals. So I'm not sure if it's the same thing as Grogu. What Grogu
That's
does.
true as well.
Yeah, but we don't know definitively.
Yeah, I was thinking about I don't know if this is true, but I feel like I heard this a long time ago that spiders are born with ancestral knowledge. And I just accepted it as ancestral knowledge that he was born with.
That's yeah.
Kind of like what you were saying about the species we don't know much about. So just the idea of ancestral knowledge and consciousness being passed down. I don't know, that does kind of open up some interesting things. But it would be cool, just the idea that Grogu was born, because he's still a child, and fear, and we just assume it has to do with Order 66 and the events he witnessed. But what if larger understanding, he has seen everything that his ancestors saw?
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
He did kind of trade thoughts with Ahsoka. He's like, I've only known one other, and that was Yoda. And then Grogu was like, oh, and then she said, yeah, he's gone. And he's like, oh. And it makes me think of Chaco's meiosis kind of character type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
What if as soon as he was hatched or as soon as he was born, he received all of Yaddle and Yoda's knowledge, and as soon as he's able to be autonomous, he's like already Grandmaster level. That would be so OP. Oh my gosh. In 10 years, Luke is like, okay, Grogu, it seems you've grown a lot. Can you show me how far you've progressed? He's like, I know all forms of the lightsabers. I
All of
know.
it.
That's awesome, man.
I am the master. Yes, on the subject of Yoda, Edgelord Lissy asked me in response to something I mentioned about how Yoda said that the clones looked different in the Force. They asked me to expand on that some more. And so I figure, who better to do that with than you guys? Just the idea of like Force signature and look in the Force, even though you're a clone.
Yeah. So
Ooh. I'm going to make a video on this tomorrow.
The short of it, I love to make short of it, so you can make a video on it, but it goes back to like how it was described by Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's, you know, it's an energy field that surrounds us, that binds us, that penetrates us, and it connects the galaxy together. And the living force, as it binds us and as it penetrates us, it creates, it permeates through us. So, you know, you can look at plants and trees and animals, and they all have different effects on how the force flows. And it goes back to, you know, what we saw in the tragedy in The Mandalorian, how the force looks to a force sensitive person. It's luminous, right? As Yoda says, luminous beings. And so to someone who is force sensitive and keenly force sensitive, you could see how this thing is flowing through someone, and then if they are especially luminous, like how it'll just like waves of light energy coming off of people. And so, you know, you take 3 clones, they all look the same. They all have 3 physically, you know, mirrored images to each other. But the force, when it, you know, flows through them, they're each going to give off different vibes, and their vibrations are going to give off different tides and waves. That's how I see it.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. And yeah, we know that the force it's unique to each living individual, and that's why you can't just clone a force sensitive person and have them be, you know, that's also why I think it's weird when people talk about Luke and Leia, because they're fraternal twins, not identical twins. I don't know. Anyways, that's a whole side topic. But in Clone Wars Stories of Dark and Light, you actually get that same story retold, but specifically from Yoda's point of view. And he talks about how even, you know, back on Coruscant, a lot of people don't consider these clones to be human, you know, at all.
Yeah.
Like they don't have personage. And he also remarks that the feeling that they give off in the Force is just like children, because they are children. They're all, you know, what, 10 years old at this point in time. And I mean, that's kind of, I'll have to go back through the story to get more explanation. But again, each life form is unique in the Force. That's not your DNA. It's not it's not like a fingerprint, right? Each life form that comes from the living Force is different.
Yeah. And I would visualize this as, you know, take a fog machine and blow it into a room and have 2 twins walk through the fog, they're not going to give off the same, you know, form, or they're not going to dissipate the fog in the same way.
Yeah, it's interesting. That question was on a video I had made about why Darth Vader did not recognize Leia when he met her.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's a constant, that seems like a constant conversation. But he didn't know her. He didn't know her Force signature. He wasn't looking for her Force signature.
And she wasn't open to the Force.
Didn't look like, yeah, she wasn't. And, you know, he doesn't, like, you mentioned this in the video you made about this, Chaco. It's like, he didn't know Luke was his son until Boba Fett told him. He knew he was strong in the Force, but he didn't know who he was or how it was connected to him. And I think I used that Yoda as kind of a source to kind of be like, even though it's your child, it's not going to look like you. You're not going to be like, oh, like, that's my Force signature. You know?
Yeah.
That's a great point. Skull274 says, can I please get an explanation on what the heck happened to Bib Fortuna after episode 6? So we don't know exactly.
Seems like he was eating a lot.
Living the good life.
Yeah.
It's the camera.
Definitely.
No, but do you guys have an idea of a short story of what happened to Bib Fortuna afterwards?
To be honest, I didn't care too much to kind of think about it. I mean, you kind of see it in that after credit scene. He's been largely filling a power vacuum with Jabba the Hutt not there. And with the fall of the Empire, largely, there's no one really that is kind of a lot of the syndicates and the cartels were largely left to their own devices, and who cares about Tatooine, you know? So, like, I mean, he's just enjoying himself and eating food, and enjoying boba milk tea, because when he said boba, that's all I heard. That's all I just imagined Bib ordering boba, you know. But yeah.
So my short story is, after Jabba's death, he was just so overjoyed, went home to his wife and children, had a lovely feast, and they kept feasting. And then he decided to get into knitting, and I don't know. So I don't think it was an exciting story is what I'm getting at. I think he just became, and he's sitting on that throne. And
this is my story. It's just not a good one or a bad one.
Yeah, I mean, so when I read this, yeah, obviously I think in pictures and stuff, my mind conjured up a story as well that since Bib Fortuna is weak-minded, he has no original thoughts or of anything ever at all. But being, you know, the major domo, right-hand man, he was privy to most of Boba Fett's operations.
Jabba or Boba?
Sorry, Jabba. You're saying Boba. It just scrambled my brain. But yeah, I can imagine.
Apologize.
I can imagine them getting back there, and there are contracts that are still out. There's people who want to get paid and all this stuff, and he's the only person that has access to like the bank accounts or whatever. But he has no creative mind or anything because he's just a moron. And so he's like, okay, well, I'll just do everything that Jabba did exactly.
Yeah.
This is my life now.
He just continued business as usual, I guess, right?
And maybe Salacious Crumb is his major domo. That's what I want to see.
Yes.
Did we see him? Is he still alive?
I highly doubt it.
He made friends with some loth cats.
If he did survive, he's probably like a puddle of goo under Boba's shoe while he entered the building. Happy Life Day.
Yeah. Happy Life Day, everyone.
Happy Life Day to you guys as well. Happy Life Day to everyone who's watching and listening.
I was going to say, it's a great time to be a Star Wars fan.
Read the books. We got High Republic coming out, and it's going to be great. We are going to be talking about it. So if you want to talk about it with us, grab your copy, read it. We would be honored if you would join us.
And that'll do it for this episode of Dyad in the Force. We are hugely out of time as always, but we don't mind one bit. Victoria, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us as usual. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's always such a highlight, and I would want to be doing nothing else. This is always a highlight to my week, month, year.
And every time
I appreciate you guys.
And every time we discuss Darth Vader, I will be sure to send you a message.
I'll be lurking.
Your comments and things just blow my mind all the time, and I'm just sitting there like,
I always feel like I talk too much. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. We welcome it. But of course, that is the end. On to the next one. And may the Force be with you all.